You got your bachelor's in Australia with some sort of scholarship and straight to your PhD, with also funded PhD.
Yeah, I didn't have to pay for it much.
What's the secret? What's the secret?
The secret is...
Got your bachelor's in Australia.
Yeah.
What program? What you didn't tell us the program you did.
Oh, I was
Just
a double
told us the
major.
interest, yeah?
I was a double major in sociology and media and communications. So those were media and comms is one major, and sociology was the other major.
Okay, and now with your major in humanities, you are doing a PhD from bachelor's straight up to PhD program in one of the best universities in America. I mean, the sixth or seventh, I think sixth best university in America, Northwestern.
Yeah.
In Chicago. Okay, tell me about that.
Okay, I don't think about it like that. Because...
Two things, tell me about moving directly from because there's always this idea of I've got to get a bachelor's, then get a master's, then get a PhD. But you're moving from bachelor's straight up to PhD.
Yeah.
And for you, it's got to be special. You got your bachelor's in Australia with some sort of scholarship and straight to your PhD, with also funded PhD.
Yeah, I didn't have to pay for it much.
What's the secret? What's the secret?
The secret is studying. A lot of studying.
I don't like study. What
Beth,
alternatives
I'm sorry.
do I have?
I mean, I got involved with a lot of different things. I didn't like I think one thing that did work for me is not just studying.
Okay.
I know lots of, the University of Melbourne is a good university. Lots of people there get great grades. It's a good place. Everyone, and Australia has a big culture of people not graduating full time. Because you can work outside campus. Most people choose to have jobs that they care about, right?
Oh, okay.
Australia, the minimum wage is pretty cool. So if you have a job, it's nice for you to have stuff. The cost of living is super high, though, just a But while I was
Australia generally, or just in Melbourne?
I mean, Australia generally, but Melbourne and Sydney is like really bad. Like it's quite difficult to eat sometimes, like 3 meals a day. I also struggled, and I had a good job. It's cool because Australia has a 3-year undergraduate process, so it's a 3-year bachelor's degree, and then I did an honors on top of that, which is 4 years. So it's the same as doing a bachelor's in the US, which is 4 years. So I did a fourth honors year, which is basically you write thesis and do like some coursework, which is like research, principles, practices, writing, that sort of stuff. I took a bunch of like diverse courses. I did a cinema and censorship class, which was not very relevant to my actual degree, but I enjoyed it. But I did a thesis on the aesthetics of protest movements and the impact of technology on the aesthetics of protest movements, which is, I guess I did well in that, not because I studied a lot, but because I was actually organizing.
Yeah, okay.
And that really influenced, because if I had to like sit and just study, I think I would drive myself a little bit crazy.
You were doing things in the field. You were busy, but
so I was
always, really busy.
Yeah, and I always had a job as well. I worked in the Australian government I was a parliamentary policy advisor for foreign affairs.
A migrant, how did you get a job with the government? Because I know it's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't know anyone else who was a non-citizen, but there was also nothing strictly disqualifying me from it. Because I think they didn't realize that non-citizens would apply, so they never said that they couldn't.
Okay.
It was interesting. But I didn't work in the government, right? I worked for a parliamentary party. I worked for the Greens Party. The senator I was working with, she was the first openly queer senator in Australia. She's very cool. She is like one of the most, she's retired now. She was, her name is Janet. She was like the coolest person I think I knew. I'm so glad I got a chance to learn from her when I was so young. And I was 20 when I got the job. I applied for the job while I was still a teenager. And so I interviewed, basically I submitted a CV. I did the proper, like the application process, right? I applied just like everyone else did. I did an interview. I prepared my ass off for the questions. I got a lot of different community members. I asked them what sorts of things they would like me to bring up in the interview. It was a double portfolio role between LGBTQI plus affairs and foreign affairs and multiculturalism. And so I really enjoyed, because I'm a queer immigrant. I feel very closely about those issues. So I obviously had the lived experience expertise, but I also was taught how to do parliamentary research, how to write a speech. So I did the classic media person where I learned to be a speechwriter. And I did and I think that really worked for me. Like, I know this sounds great from like a CV point of view, right? Like obviously, because you're asking me about the PhD, like obviously when you see a kid.
I see where it comes from.
Yeah, when you see like when I applied to graduate school, I was 23. So when you see a 23-year-old person who has worked in like a foreign affairs role for like so many years, I was also like a big organizer in Australia. I worked for a lot of non-profit bodies. I've served board roles. So like I didn't have the CV of 23.
You've done a lot in 20.
Maybe, maybe it's me. Maybe it's because I have ADHD and need to do 5 things at once. So yeah, there's that. But I always did something that I was interested in doing. So it didn't it was very hard work. You know how people say if you do something you love, you're never going to work a day in your life?
Yeah.
I think if you do something you love, you're never going to stop working a day in your life. You're going to work 20, and every PhD student knows this. Like you like what you do, but it's a lot of work.
It can drive you crazy.
Yeah. But I guess I really enjoyed doing that. I've always made sure to have sort of grounding. A big part of this is my partner. He encouraged me to apply. I was very like, I've just gotten a bachelor's. I'm not going to be good enough to get into Northwestern. Like I wanted to come here since I was 15. I was very intimidated. And so my partner was like, what are they going to do? Say no? But you're already saying no to yourself in your head.
You said you've been wanting to be here since you're 15.
Yeah, I wanted to come here for my undergraduate.
I mean, we've got Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Northwestern, Cornell, all these top schools in America.
Yeah.
Why Northwestern? I mean, you could have gone to Harvard.
Interesting. Yeah, I could have.
Princeton or Stanford or MIT or California Tech.
I think I was considering MIT.
Okay.
Because I obviously do tech studies. I was considering MIT. I think one of the reasons, and I had to prepare the why Northwestern question answer for my visa. So they didn't ask me, but I did prepare. Yeah, so I was considering MIT because, I study tech stuff. But I think the reason I picked Northwestern is because, and this is something like I brought up in my visa interview when they asked me why Northwestern, is all the schools that you mentioned, they have good communications departments, but communications isn't one of their most famous departments. They're like just another department at the university. They're more known for a bunch of their other stuff. They're usually STEM things. I know Harvard is known for its political science degree, but they're all very traditionalist schools. They're like disciplines that are well-defined, and they're disciplines that their research sticks to them. So when you look at the centers or the labs they're working in, the disciplines aren't very like free to explore. You're not given because they are schools with that like prestige and privilege, and they really want to keep that. And like I know that works for some people too. Like some people like that really works for. I have friends who go to some of those schools, and I know they're doing really well for themselves because that structure works for them. I considered Annenberg at UPenn.
Okay.
Yeah, but
that's one of the top schools in communication.
Yeah, I considered. I actually got in, but I didn't want to go there because again, it's a very comms program. Like it's a very quant program. It's very quantitative, like the research.
Okay.
For me, like the stuff I was looking into, it looked very quantitative. Some of the people I admire deeply in the field actually do work there. Manuel Castells is an emeritus professor there.
Shout out to him.
And he's kind of the big guy in movement studies because he wrote the book Networks of Outrage and Hope. He's very popular for like doing network and movement studies. And I love his work, and it inspired a lot of my own work. But he's an emeritus professor, and none of the people working there at the moment were like doing very exploring stuff, things that they were redefining disciplines and like exploring boundaries between. I think Northwestern is very good. One, because they have 3 PhDs from just the comm school.
Yeah.
So they take their communications seriously because they have 3 different PhDs. That's just a communications PhD, which is tech and social behavior, media, tech and society, and then our program, which is rhetorics, media, and publics. So they take it seriously because just the communications school. I was never going. I didn't see any other school that was doing a PhD in communications that wasn't just called the PhD in communications, where they were specifically making a distinction in disciplines because they cared about the tradition.
I see why you chose Northwestern.
Yeah, like I care very deeply about
these
these
things. Did you know
things.
if you would get in when you were applying?
I thought I would.
You thought you would?
I thought I would. I cold applied to Northwestern, so with the other applications I did, I knew some faculty or I had talked to someone. I cold applied here, so I didn't know anyone here. Like I hadn't spoken to anyone. Honestly, this is gonna sound like a bit of a up myself situation,
but please.
But I did think I would get in.
Yeah.
Like it's an interesting thing, but I left myself a sign. So I actually went home. I applied while I still lived in Australia, but I went home to visit my parents after the end of the Australian winter, which is like in August, September, October last year.
That's the end of winter.
Yeah, it's the end. Like it's the end of spring actually, because then after that you have summer in Australia. It's the other way around. But I went home and I was like,
when is summer in Australia?
December, January. Because it's the other side of the world. So you have the opposite. Yeah. So when I'm going to be snowed in Chicago, all of my friends will be at the beach in Melbourne, and it's going to be terrible for my head. Yes.
Okay, now I see. Okay.
But I went home in October, which was the end of the Melbourne winter, and I took my big coat home and I gave it to my mom because I knew I was never going to need it in Melbourne again because I moved out. I got my offer before, so I just moved.
Oh, okay.
So my next winter was not going to be in Melbourne, and I knew that.
Was moving difficult?
Yes, it was.
Melbourne home to you? Or
Yeah,
was
like
just
I lived there
this-
during COVID, man. I was bonded to that city with all my trauma. It was my first home that was just mine. Like my parents didn't live there. It was my home. I made it
Okay.
with my friends and like people who chose to love me through like nothing. Like Melbourne had one of the worst lockdowns in any democratic city in the world. We
What
were
happened?
basically locked down for like 2 years, just 1-2 months in and out.
Well, how was the COVID situation there?
Oh,
Was
in
bad?
Melbourne it
People
was
died?
awful. Oh yeah, people died, but even
massive.
before the people died, like Victoria is the state Melbourne is in. It's a very there was a the lockdowns went on for like 2 years, and then people still died in millions. Like, what is the point?
Millions.
Like it was, I think the total in Australia is like 6 figures now for sure. Like the moment lockdowns lifted, immediately like everyone like got sick, and I was like, what was the point of locking us down for 2 years? Because the public healthcare system in Australia can fall apart like that. So they were like, maybe we were just gonna lock down our way out of this. I was like, no, you should have built more infrastructure as opposed to lock us in. The lockdowns did help in many ways, but I think they should have done it in a way that was more sustainable than we're gonna prison everyone in.
The world was in chaos.
It was also really
nobody
racist.
knew
They went into the public housing towers full of like Somali refugees and sent correctional officers to keep them in as if their houses were prisons. It was really horrible, actually. Melbourne had a traumatizing time. And Melbourne, it was traumatic. And so the people who chose to love me through that time bring me food, and then I brought them food as well. We were all functioning out of nothing. And when you have nothing and you still choose to love someone, those people are your family. And I hate the fact that I had to move in many ways.
I was in Sweden. Luckily, we didn't have a lockdown.
Great.
So we never
That's
had
wonderful for you. I love that for you. I hate that for me though. But no, I found some of that. And it's also around when I got involved with more movements because I needed to have community of people who had my values and the people who believed in the same things as I did. And it gave me friends for life. Like some of these people are my family. I miss them exactly as much as I miss my parents who also live away from me. So yeah.
So moving to the US, how is life here?
I mean, I'm having fun so far.
Okay.
I enjoy the workload because it's pretty
Northwestern?
busy.
Well, okay. You had these expectations that built up since you were 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so far,
is it everything it promised you?
Yes. I
mean, I did have expectations from Northwestern. I had expectations from myself to get into Northwestern, so I did fine. But I haven't been disappointed so far because I saw this as a school that is very creatively inclined. It has a lot of things going on in the school that have. The reading is insane, and we're all having trouble with that. That's fine, but there's also there's so many good things. I mean, it's good that we are a pretty big cohort, and we are a very diverse cohort with a lot of different experiences, and I've never had the opportunity in my life to really be friends with the people who were my peers instead of having them as competitors, right?
Okay.
Because I grew up in situations that
so
were so
competition
stark.
is lower here.
I know it's competitive.
In all these big schools,
it is competitive.
Highly,
it is competitive.
Highly,
but I think I don't know about the other cohorts. I'm sure.
But you sound like you're very competitive.
I mean, I don't think I'm competitive. I think I'm competent.
Okay.
I think I chase good things, but just for myself.
Yeah.
I also help other people chase their goals. Like if someone says they want to do something, I'm the first person to offer to help them. I actually don't think that if other people lose out on things that I would win them. I don't want us all to lose. At least someone will win it that way, right? So I'm a very collaborative person. I want everyone to be competent as opposed to just myself to be competent. I do want myself to be competent, but I also want everyone else to be good.
So 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone, let's say there's this young person, 15-year-old in India, that wants to get into Northwestern, having another dream, how can that happen? Do they have to go to Australia first?
I mean, they can. Also, you can go to school in your home country. It's actually, you save a bunch of money. If you like your parents and have a good family, you can also live with them and it's comfortable. I really miss my parents. I don't think you necessarily need to move away to be successful. I know that a lot of times, these kinds of our stories are used as success stories, right? It's so nice to move away, and it is a success story.
You're fully funded. It's
I
a success
did,
story,
and it is a success story. But no one sees the ugly side.
What was the
no one saw the number of nights I was lying on the floor crying because my essay.
Did you cry last night?
Oh no, not since I moved to Chicago. This is more a Melbourne thing. But nobody saw the number of times I cried on the floor because I thought my essay wasn't good enough.
Okay.
I know it was. I know now it was. In fact, now as I've taught.
I mean, all those anxieties. I think you also have those anxieties even if you're in India. So it doesn't matter whether.
But it's nice to have someone else around you. I did this by myself. What I'm saying is, it's not like a lot of success stories are seen as very individual things. Like this person did this thing. Nobody sees the people around them. Like when you see my CV, you don't see the number of friends who brought me food because of which I got through my essay. You don't get to see all these and I prioritize those things a lot because I know I would have done none of it without my friends. My partner, who, we've been sighted and worked together, but you don't really see him when you see my success. But like, I would have not even gone through high school if it wasn't for my partner. Like that man sat there and on the phone with me, making me do my high school studying, and I owe a lot of this to him. I owe a lot of this to my parents and my friends. So I think that's one thing I would
lovely
say.
People in your life,
I do, and I've also had my share of bad people.
Story.
I've also had my share of bad people.
Let's not talk about bad people.
That's what I'm saying. If there's a kid in India currently whose friends who's not getting along with their friends, and everyone has that problem in high school, by the way. If you're not getting along with your friends or whatever, I don't want to be the person who's life works out, because at 15 it doesn't feel like it will. I'm almost 25 now, and because it has gone well for me, I think that now. When I was 15, I was still I will fail, I will never get to uni. I obviously thought that, but it didn't happen that way. So I think that those are natural feelings, but don't lose your faith in yourself. A lot of people wanted me to study different things. A lot of people wanted me to go to different places, but I didn't want to do those things. And I really fought when this was the battle I picked. I really fought. I told my parents I was not going to do engineering, and my dad really wanted me to do science because the path is really defined for you in science. Humanities is very much you have to figure it out yourself. There's also
some job security in science.
Yeah, and there's visa securities as well. So, and especially with the Global South passport, you're kind of always chasing that. My dad he didn't want me to study science because he thought that the humanities are bad to study or anything. He just thought I would find it easier because it's more secure that way. And they're very proud of me now, but I remember in year 11 and 12 that there was always a screaming match happening in my house. So don't lose your faith in yourself during that time is what I would say. Because keep an eye out on the people who are getting in now and what they did when they were younger, because their paths look very similar. Every time I looked at someone's bio, who was doing a PhD when I was sort of 15 and in high school. And I would always see this person has done this fellowship and that grant. And I was oh my God, I will never do these things. And then I was what was this person doing when they were 15 or 16? And turns out they were a prefect in school, and they did debate club. And I did those things. And I was okay, cool. So they only have that many grants because they're older than me. I will get there when I get there.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Melbourne, I was oh yeah, I have a student leadership position. I have a few grants. I've gotten a few prizes. And so take it step by step. Don't look at someone's CV or look at someone's bio and be oh my God, that person got 4 grants. I will never get there, because you haven't gotten there yet because you're 15, and those things haven't opened up for you yet. You don't know what there is out there. There's so many things I would have lost.
How can they prepare to be part of Northwestern? I mean, someone wants to join Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwestern.
What's the scholarship secret? We need that secret.
Oh, my scholarship secret was doing things that are not studied. So okay. I have a lot of extracurriculars, because honestly, I went to a good school. Everyone in my school was studying. There were a lot of good students in my year, and they didn't all end up getting the scholarships or going away because they were just studying. They were focused so much on rote learning and retention. And I think people lose sight of their bigger goals in front of their big small goals, the small goals in front of them that look very big just because they're in front of you. And I think for me, getting a fully funded PhD in some sort of culture, rhetoric, media area was the big goal. So sometimes when smaller things happened in front and I felt like it was not going very well, I just ignored them. I was you know what? I'm just not going to study for this exam. I'm just going to go to some model UN or debate something. I met my partner that way, and it made me very good at writing speeches, and I got a career out of it after.
Yeah.
I was a speechwriter in foreign affairs. Those people that I model UN with, who bullied me because they were boys and they believed they were better than me, were still doing model UN in college when I was writing speeches for the actual UN. So, sometimes things can seem really big just because they're in front of you. One day you are just never going to remember what it was that happened. And you're going to get a good scholarship and go to a nice place, and then you're going to look back and be why was I crying? What happened?
Christy, thank you so much. This has been a exciting conversation.
Thank you.
Moving from social movements, organizing one or being part of one as an immigrant, down to getting a scholarship and going to the best school in America. She says you can do that in India. If you agree, I don't know if you disagree.
You can. I have friends who've done it. I have friends who are getting PhDs in the US who went to school in India, till their masters, and they got in with scholarships.
Yeah. Thanks for being part of us. See you next time.
Yay.
She's gonna be our guest again. I don't know when. Promise us when.